You're listening to the Everything Kids Books podcast, hosted by Aaron Mackey, a podcast for little learners and their parents who love to read together, as well as the authors who write the books they love. Aaron's written over 20 books for elementary and middle schoolers and has published 5 books. Together, we'll be reading chapters of your favorite books, sharing your original works, giving writing and marketing tips, and interviewing other professionals in the children's book profession. Let's dive in, shall we?
Hello everybody, my name is Aaron Mackey and I'm the host of Everything Kids Books, a podcast all about reading and writing children's books. Today's topic is going to be using an outline when writing your children's book. I know that some authors do not like to use an outline and some won't go without it. I'm going to go over a few of the benefits as well as some of the negatives and then give you my personal opinion and what I use. Some of the benefits to using an outline when you're writing a children's book or any book is that you're able to keep a timeline of when you want certain events to happen in the book. So not necessarily what chapter they may go in, but if you know that you want event A to happen before event B, but then you find another one and you want to put it in between, you're able to do that very easily on an outline without having to actually write the sentences out. It's just a thought that you have and you want to almost put a placeholder in it for the future. So it does make it very easy to keep track of those events when you have an outline. Second benefit is that it keeps you on track in the story and keeps you from going astray or possibly going on tangents or starting additional plot points. It's easy to write off of an outline where you see, okay, in the next few chapters or in this chapter, depending on how you do the outline, I want to cover these 4 things. And your focus becomes on those, and it keeps your mind from wandering into other strayed areas that you may go. I know with our creative minds, we get great ideas and we just start going on tangents a lot of times. So, it really helps to keep you on track, working off of an outline. The third benefit is it can actually help you to write faster because you're staying more organized. So you're not constantly shifting and going off multiple papers. You're basically going right off of that outline. So you really stay organized with your thoughts, with the plot points you want to cover, the events that should occur in the book. And it really does allow you to write faster and to develop your story quicker. There are a few negatives to using an outline. One is that you can wind up spending too much time working on the outline and not enough time doing the writing itself. Some people get very, very detailed on their outline, and if they make an adjustment as they're writing their manuscript, they will go back and make the adjustments to the outlines as well, and that can be very time-consuming and keep you from being able to move forward with the creative process of actually writing your story. The second negative is, and it leads in from that, it can make you feel less creative and more like you're doing actual work, almost like it's a report or a paper that you have to write like you did in school or for work, instead of having that creative energy when you're designing and developing a story. It really can just make it lose that spark and keep you from feeling excited about the work. The third thing, you may struggle to create a complete outline if you don't know how you want the story to end, or you don't know what events you want to happen in the middle. So you may only be able to do a few lines of an outline or a few bullet points of an outline, and you may feel like I can't start my story until I get an actual outline. So it could make you struggle even more to begin your project. Now, personally, I do use an outline. What I normally do with my writing process is I start with an idea. I have different templates that I created on Word docs for outlining picture books and fiction books. They are a little different. Picture books are much shorter. You don't need as much character development, things like that. You do still want to do character development, but it's not as extensive as fiction usually is, a chapter book, a middle grade book, a young adult book. So I have different templates for that. So I'll pull the template out and I start with creating the title I don't struggle too much over the title. If I really can't get it on the first, 15, 20 minutes, then I'm just going to put it untitled and come back to it. Because a lot of times you'll get ideas as you're going in and creating the story and focusing on something else. Some title ideas will pop in your head for that. So don't kill yourself if you can't get a title right off. You can still just have your outline and have it say untitled. I do a lot of the character developments, naming the characters. I spend a lot of time, I'm probably so OCD, but I spend a lot of time naming my characters, making sure the character names flow well together. They sound good in the story. They sound appropriate for the character type. So if it's a villain, I want them to sound like they're a villain, not like they're your best friend next door. So the character names I really try to be very focused on. But like I said, that could just be my OCD too. I do the complete character development. So we're talking physical description, backstories if I had them, for both major and minor characters. I note any specifics about the locations for the book. If there's a certain town, stores that may be in the town, especially the names of stores or restaurants or things like that, so that I have that reference to go back to. Because if you're naming the pizza place in your first chapter and then you're in chapter 7 and you can't remember what you named it, you're doing a lot of reading and rereading to try to find what you named it to keep it cohesive. So I list that all on my outline. Specific setting descriptions. If I want a room to be a certain way, I will go ahead and list it up there, again, just to keep it organized, and I have an easy reference back when I'm writing it in different parts of the book. But then I start my actual outline. I actually have 2 different formats that I use, depending on how the story idea comes to me and how it's forming. The first one, I do an actual outline, like you did in school when you were doing a paper. So number 1, next bullet point, it adjusts over, and then you have bullet point A through whatever, and it will keep tabbing over to keep them all set. And I will go through and usually start with the chapter title as the first point, and then I will tab over and I will list the events I want to happen in that chapter. If there's any specifics, I will do that underneath those specific events and points. So an example here is when the kids settle in at a location and they're getting to know everybody. I might list out underneath that point who they're going to be describing and talking about and meeting. So things like that you can list out in the outline as well. The second way that I do it is I do a list of plot points in chronological order. So they're not tabbed over and separated. They're not by specific chapters. It is literally just using the paragraph bullets and going through and writing different points that I want to cover in the story. I do it very detailed. It can get very long. I've had 5 pages of bullet points for a young adult chapter book before. I may actually write out dialogue that I want to use in the book word for word, and I will quote it in my bullet points so I know that I want to use that specifically in the book the way it is. So it's very detailed, and I will copy that and paste it on my actual manuscript template as I'm writing, and as I'm covering these bullet points, I will delete them from below. So they're right there for me to reference, but I can also print them off and have it next to me and check things off as I'm going. So I find it very helpful to use an outline. Like I said, there's the 2 different formats, so it just depends on which works best for the story, the way that the story comes to me. But I find them both very, very helpful. That could be because I'm, like I said, OCD, a little overly organized on things. So, it works well for me. It may not work well for you, though. You may have that real creative spark and spirit that you need to just be able to flow, and you don't want to have something dictated out for you. And that's okay. They're both okay. Whether you use an outline or don't use an outline, whatever works for your creative process, that's what you want to focus on. So that's it for today's show. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode and found it helpful. Have a wonderful evening, and God bless each of you.
Thanks for listening to Everything Kids Books. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review in Apple Podcast. Do you have a favorite children's book? Do you have an original book or chapter that you've written? Email it to Erin at erinmackeyauthor@yahoo.com. It could be featured on the next episode. For more information, to see Erin's published books, and to sign up for Erin's newsletter, visit www.erinmackeyauthor.com. Until next time, keep reading and keep writing.